closed, the power is not on. When there's no one here, we tend to turn the heat down, right? We don't usually keep the air cranked in the summer when no one is here. We use something like a Nest, or we hit the thermostat on the way out the door for the evening. And we have ways to control those variable expenses. They fluctuate with our use. The opposite of that is a fixed expense that no matter what, no matter how much you use it, you pay that same amount. Probably the biggest source of expense costs for a business is going to be your rent or your mortgage. That it doesn't matter if you have one patient 1 day a week at your clinic, or if you have 100 patients every day that month, your rent is the same price every month, right? That is a fixed expense. We have things like loans, borrowing money to start, borrowing money to renovate your space and redesign it, or equipment purchases, things like that. That no matter how much Doris uses that assault bike, the loan for that equipment is the same month over month over month over month. Things like an EMR tend to be fixed. There was a point in time where EMRs were variable, that with the amount of patients you saw, if you were a quarter time, a part time, a full time clinician, your EMR would flex with you and be a variable expense. That time is gone, right? That time has passed. Every EMR now is a fixed flat amount, and it's usually per clinic, and it's usually a very large amount of money. And again, it doesn't matter how many patients you see, it doesn't matter how many clinicians you have. Usually it's a fixed flat amount that is due every month. Other things, a cleaning service, a linen service. And then things that we really don't think about early on because it's usually just us, but payroll is a big fixed expense, especially if you're paying people on a salary basis. That as businesses tend to grow, they tend to accumulate administrative people. We fight very hard at ICE to do that. Since 11 years ago now, the only administrative people we've added have been myself, and we have a chief administrative officer, Rachel Selena. We've only added two people in 11 years, as we've added almost 100 faculty and instructors. So keeping the amount of people you hire who don't generate revenue but are around just to operate your business for you low is a very important way to also limit your fixed expenses. So why does this happen? Well, again, the math is quite simple. You are spending more than you're making, right? You will hear people say, oh, we just couldn't get off the ground. And it really starts at the very beginning of being intentional when you're thinking about opening a business, or getting ahead of this very early on. If you've already opened a business, is very important. That initial startup phase is crucial. If you go too head in, if you jump in feet first with a lot of these things, you will find yourself with contracts, even sometimes for many years, for these fixed expenses that are going to have you pretty much underwater in a way that sees you need to significantly ramp up your revenue generation. And again, often a way that most businesses can't get around, which is why we see that those business failure statistics go up and up and up and up. That if you're in a stage right now where maybe you have a side hustle, maybe you see some people at your gym or from your running club or something, and you just have a table in your trunk and you take cash, or you're still working for someone else right now and you're thinking about opening your own practice in that initial startup phase, or that side hustle phase, this is the time to really sit down and list these things out and be really hard on clamping down on them. That early on, even before you open your business, but especially once you open your business, you should really have a save and growth mindset, that as much money as possible needs to stay within the business, even such that those first couple of years you may not pay yourself, and you especially may not pay yourself whatever you were making before you quit your day job to start this new business idea, right? But having too many fixed expenses, having payroll, pulling too much money out of the business leaves you in a state where that business no longer has the money to grow, right? You essentially have created a job and not a business, which is fine. Again, if that is your goal, if your goal is just, we talked about this last week, what is your goal? If your goal is just to work a more flexible schedule, to be able to wear stretchy pants to work, that is fine. But you need to recognize that is the difference between creating a job and creating a business that is then going to grow and employ other people, and maybe even grow to the point someday of having multiple locations. Those are two divergent paths. Of if you take all the money out of your business to pay yourself, you have created a job. You don't have enough money left usually to then continue to grow that business, to hire more people, to do things like marketing. So it's important that we understand those differences. So early on is the time to get really clamped down on this and be really stern and careful as you start to buy things, purchase things, sign contracts for fixed expenses. What we need to understand is that you probably aren't going to be able to get one anyways, but going to the bank and borrowing sometimes millions of dollars is really kind of an old school way of starting a business. And really in our industry, it's not something that tends to work very well. I remember almost 10 years now sitting in physical therapy school and having a quote unquote business class and being told that, hey, the best way, if you want to work for yourself, is when you graduate, just go on down to the bank, ask for 1 to 2 million, purchase a building, renovate it, get some tables, hire a couple people, hire some front end staff, and then, you might have a cool million left in the bank to pay those salaries for the first couple years. And by that point, you'll have made millions and it won't really matter. And I don't know if that business model has ever worked, but it certainly doesn't work now, right? When you show up to the bank and you have 300 grand in student loan debt, and if you also happen to have a mortgage and a car payment, that loan officer is not going to give you $2 million, right? Especially if your business plan is, I want to open a physical therapy clinic. They're going to say, well, there are literally tens of thousands of these. This is not a new business idea or anything that stands out in any particular way that would make us want to give you this much money. So good luck with your business. Goodbye, right? It simply doesn't work that way. It's also not very responsible to do that, to borrow millions and millions of dollars and just hope, again, that at some point your revenue magically exceeds your expenses and that you can pay those loans back. Again, that is a fixed expense. That loan that you're borrowing to start your business is the start of the fixed expense cascade. So we need to recognize too that expenses exceed revenue in the short term of any business. It's the nature of starting a business and growing. Of expecting to open your doors and immediately be profitable is rare, especially in our industry. Unless you are doing it at your friend's gym where you don't have any costs, you bring a table and you take cash, that expecting to be instantly profitable is unlikely. So we do need to have some money saved, but it's responsible to have that money come from ourselves instead of attempting to borrow a lot of money from a bank and then need to worry about paying that back later at interest. It's important, necessary period of time. And in this period of time, it's really important that you be patient. It's grindy. Yes, it would be nice in this period of time to have somebody come in and clean the clinic every night instead of you. That it would be nice in this period of time to have a linen service instead of you taking your towels home every night and cleaning them and washing them and drying them and bringing back and folding them. Just know that that time will come, but it will only come if you're responsible in that early stage of developing business and you really fight hard to limit those fixed expenses and keep expenses down while you're growing that revenue. If you get to the point where revenue exceeds expenses, now you have wiggle room in that budget for that nice stuff. So be patient and know that the nice stuff will come. Otherwise, what we tend to see is it can be really easy to be talked into signing up for something that may only be $50 or $100 a month. But as a business owner, you really need to start thinking long term. You need to be thinking in years. Of $100 a month seems manageable, but maybe $1,200 a year does not, right? Maybe $500 a month seems manageable, but $6,000 a year does not. That things can seem really approachable broken down month by month. That's why most companies bill monthly, right? It seems more approachable than making you pay the whole year at once or making you pay the whole year at the end of the year. That it's designed that way. It's called the Netflix phenomenon, right? Of like $9.99 a month, no problem. Oh, that's $120 a year. That's hundreds and thousands of dollars across multiple years. So starting to think in a longer timeline will be very helpful when you're looking at what expenses are absolutely necessary and what do those look like long term. It's also starts the thought of thinking about patients in a patients per month metric of when I look at an expense, how many patients per week, per day, per month would we need to increase by to offset that expense? And how likely is that? Right? Of like, okay, yeah, we could bring on linen services. That's $100 a month. That's one more patient a month. That seems totally approachable. What about moving to a new building where your rent is now $5,000 and now you need to see 50 more patients a month just to even out that expense? Suddenly it seems totally unapproachable, right? Wow, we need to see 50 more people a month just to break even on the new rent we're looking at the new building we're looking into moving to. So starting to think about that can really help you conceptualize what this is actually going to cost you and if it's actually feasible and possible or not, right? You get to a point where you can't see that many patients at all, right? Even if you were in a high volume clinic seeing multiple people per hour, it just does not become possible to take on some of these expenses given where your current revenue is at. So starting to think about it in a patients per month metric can be very, very helpful. And then we'll just finalize and wrap up here of what are some common fixed costs. We talked about some already, but what are some ways to mitigate those? Number one, the number one thing I always talk to people when they reach out about thinking about starting their own business, often their first question is, what should I be paying for rent? The answer there is complex. It's going to depend, first of all, wildly depending on your geography. You should know that real estate is classed into three different commercial classes: Class A, Class B, Class C, and then you will pay a certain range of price per square foot based on the class of building that you're looking at. So understanding the class of space you're actually thinking about renting or buying is important, but knowing if you're on the high end or low end of that is also important in helping calculate your expenses. Class A is obviously the nicest. It's the brand new all glass building downtown. It's next to the yoga studio and the cycle bar and the smoothie place, right? That's Class A. Class B is where most of us exist in physical therapy. We're kind of like a strip mall, right? We're in between the shawarma shop and the pet store, right? It's not the cool downtown place, but it's whatever. It's safe, it's clean, it's fine. It's Class B. And then Class C is like the warehouse district, right? That's you might be next to a gym. You might be in an area where the parking spaces aren't marked. You're in Class C. You're paying the least. You get what you pay for at some point. Deciding for yourself when you start your business what you're comfortable with of, I want this to be a Class A business. I want this to be the nicest possible place ever. Or are you okay with being in the warehouse district, right? It really depends on the type of business you see yourself owning. Again, this is your business, so you should have an idea of what it looks like in your head and deciding, is Class A for me, Class B for me, Class C for me, and then what is the price per square foot for this building? That will really help you determine if you're overpaying or underpaying. And that will help you know as well once you get a firm number if that's inside or outside of your budget. When people reach out and say, how much should I be paying? Oftentimes they give me a number that makes my jaw drop. I'm thinking about this place. It's about $5,000 a month. Okay, if you're opening your doors and you have no guarantee that there are going to be any patients there, does it make sense to commit to what is $60,000 a year, usually on a multi-year lease or contract? Does that make sense? Is that feasible? And understanding how many patients you're going to need to ramp up to just to break even there will really help you understand that that is a huge fixed expense. It cannot be changed. It does not change with how successful you are. And it's going to start to bury you into a hole and a point that you may never recover from. And there are a lot of expenses like that as well, right? EMRs, again, seem cheap month to month, but when you start to recognize, wow, this EMR is $15,000 or $20,000 a year, it becomes very similar to rent, that it becomes unapproachable at a certain degree and creates a level of debt that you may not get out of. You might become one of those statistics about a business that does not make it. Payroll is another expense that I often talk to people about. They often want to start their business and they don't like to do the organizational stuff about the business. I would say tough, right? Deal with it, get better at it. Take a class at your library on running spreadsheets or something, because what I see a lot is people overpay for rent in a very beautiful brand new space, and then they turn around and instantly hire somebody to help with their admin stuff. They have a front desk person that's answering their phones, that's scheduling patients. When you open your doors, you have no patients. Who is that person scheduling? Who are they calling? Who are they talking to? Who are they interfacing with? You're paying that person to do nothing for a long period of time until you get significantly busy, that person is maybe now starting to earn that full-time cost. So understanding the more you do on your own, the more you can do your own scheduling or leverage technology to do it, the more you can do your own billing. A lot of modern EMRs let you bill the insurance company directly. You don't need a billing person. You don't even need billing software. It just happens from your EMR. The less you will incur these fixed expenses of a high rent, of a lot of people on payroll who aren't generating revenue, and these other expenses like EMRs that really start to eat away at your revenue and make it so that no matter what, no matter how busy you seem to get, no matter how much you're working, you just can't seem to get ahead. You just can't seem to get off the ground. And the source of that, I promise you, is too many fixed expenses. So early on in the pre-planning stage, Right now, if you're in the early business opening stage, take a step back, reflect. Have I taken on too many fixed expenses? The answer for most people is going to be yes. What are those? How can I reduce them? If you've already signed a lease or something, you're probably in trouble. But can I reduce some of these expenses? And can I work on in the future fighting to accumulate these as much as possible to increase my long term profit, which will let me increase my long term growth and make sure that I'm not one of those businesses that has failed a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, that I'm still here because I fought really hard to limit the accumulation of my fixed expenses, especially as I've grown to maybe multiple providers, multiple locations, and I haven't just taken one person with expenses and magnified it a number of different times in a way that I am not getting ahead, in a way that I cannot get off the ground. So I hope this was helpful. I would love to hear questions, comments, discussion about this here on Instagram, or you can shoot them to me in an email as well. Again, if you're kind of in this contemplative stage, this pre-planning stage, check out Brick by Brick. That course is designed for you. That course is not biased in any particular way towards taking insurance or taking cash. It's got a little of something for everybody with a big emphasis on helping you successfully and legally start your business, so then you can review these more kind of in-depth topics later on. We'll continue this series. I've got about 10 more topics on this planned, and I promise we'll continue to get more into the nitty-gritty of actually functional, practical stuff as we continue this series. So I hope you have a great Thursday. Hope you have a wonderful weekend. If you're going to be at a course this weekend, we have 8 of them, I believe, so have a great time. And if you're hitting quarterfinals, best of luck with all that stuff. Have a great weekend. Bye, everybody.